here we go, Crispian. There, great. And this is Crispian Jones from Green Marine Solutions, and we're just doing an interview with him to really to find out more about his business and what he's doing. So, Crispian, tell me, what do you do in your own words?
Green Marine Solutions provides marine coordination services to the offshore wind farm industry. So basically, we look after all the people, all the vessels, permits, health and safety issues. In the unlikely event there's an emergency, we act either as a facilitator to other emergency services, or we get directly involved in evacing people off offshore wind turbines back to hospitals and things like that. So we provide marine coordination services, which includes manpower, communication systems like VHF, DMR, digital stuff, Tetra, AIS, and we also, in conjunction with other companies, we provide marine management systems, computer software, things like that, to track people offshore, or to track certificates and to track vessels.
Oh, that's great. And how long have you been doing this for?
I've been a marine coordinator since 2009. We started the company late 2011, first job 2012.
Yeah.
I've been going since then, so 10 years now.
Wow. And what made you get into this industry in the first place?
I used to work for the rich and famous on super yachts, had a son, came home from that, and then a mate of mine introduced me to crew transfer vessels, working on a wind turbine in Liverpool. So I got a job as a skipper, then went to another wind farm under construction in Harwich, which was the largest offshore construction site in the world at the time for an American company called Fleur. And then from there, the operations manager kind of nicked me off the CTV company, and I went to work in the office as a marine coordinator. Back then it wasn't really a well-known position, so we kind of created what we thought was the best thing to do. And then from there built GMS with two other guys. They've since left the company, and now I run the company on my own.
On your own. Wow. Yeah. And so run the company, what would you say is some of the biggest issues that you may have to overcome to move your business forward as you run it, on your own?
Well, it's the obvious one. Funding is probably number one. And back in the early days, there weren't very many offshore wind farms being built per year. Now, with all of the climate change and the Ukraine issues and oil and gas and all the issues we have with that, it's now obviously just gone through the stratosphere. Every country in the world is looking at some way of harnessing offshore wind. So yeah, we've just recently come back from America. We're the first UK company to be working in France. So we're building all of EDF's offshore wind farms in France at the moment. That's a challenge on its own because of the way that the French, their working time regulations and what they do out there. So that's, and the French, they're not particularly, they're good. EDF's good to work for, but there are things that are a lot different to the rest of the world on how the people are managed and the employment regulations and all kinds of things out there. So that's been quite a challenge. But yeah, I'd say funding in the early days through to now, it's we know what we're doing. We'd say we're probably one of the better companies out there now in Europe, if not in the world. We get rung up we get inquiries from all over the world now. They come straight to us. I haven't looked at tendering for a project for ages. We get invited to tender now, which is great. So we're well known in the industry. But yeah, also because I do a lot of the stuff on my own. It's having people to talk to about when you get into sticky situations and bouncing ideas off people. I'm lucky that the chairman of my company, he's now director of offshore wind for a large American company called Burns and McDonald. So he's positioned in America and he's been in the industry for some time. So we get together and I tell him what I think I should do, and he tells me whether that's a good or bad idea, basically. So, and if it's a bad idea, we try and make a good idea out of it and then move forward. So, sometimes it's challenging. I mean, I've got a full-time company secretary, and she's great. And I've got a couple of full-time marine coordinators. Mostly I subcontract it out because of the way that the industry is.
Yes.
It's very short-term construction, 2 years, maybe 3 a push, and then that's it, no work. So we have to make sure that we can look after our full-time employees, and then we just upscale and downscale when we need to.
Yes, that's good. And I guess, just thinking about this, it's good to have, people around your team, people who you could glean and lean on, for advice if you are going the wrong direction or you're making the right decision there. So, that's very valuable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've actually recently, I'm in a relationship now recently with a business coach, so that she helps a lot. she works for the London School of Business, does MBA tutoring and things like that. So obviously we speak to each other daily. So, and she'll go, "Oh, what's happening?" And I'll say, "What do you think of this?" And then she goes, "What are you going to do?" And I go, "That." And she goes, "Yeah, that's a good idea." Or I'll get in a bit of I'll get myself in a bit of a bit of a tiz, as they say, about something going on, and then she directs me and channels me down the right lane to say, "Look, control what you can control. Other things you just got to leave and to see what happens." So she's got her own really quite successful company as well. So it's always handy to throw some stuff at her as well. So that's a good thing.
That's a really good thing. And so what would you say has been your biggest learnings since you've been a business owner?
Dealing with people.
Okay.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, for me, the people I employ or subcontract, they're on my service. So, when you talk about ISOs and ISO 9001, what is the product? The products are the people, the marine coordinators we send out into the industry. So they're the most important service are a most important asset to the company. So dealing with them has been very challenging because, as you know, you have all kinds of different personalities. Some I've got too close to, as in just a little bit too personable, and then I've been stung by it. So, it's just trying to balance that work kind of professional and then personal relationship with them, because you're dealing with them. Some of them you can deal with all the time, others you don't hear from for months and months on end, because they know how to do their job. Others are a little bit more needy. So that's been the biggest learning curve, I'd say.
Wow. And what would you say, who is your best customer, Crispian?
At the moment, is EDF is our number one customer. Our most long-term customer has been a company called Sea Power, which is based in Belgium. Okay. We've been working for them now since 2013. So we provide marine coordination services to them in the operations and maintenance phase. So we're quite lucky that we've got a really good relationship with them, and like I said, we've been there for 9 years now, and they're really happy with us. And that's so I suppose over the history of GMS, Sea Power is the number one and the most reliablest company we work for. But EDF is definitely the highest turnover of work and finances. So we've been lucky to work for some really good companies. Worked for Siemens a long time ago. It was one of our first jobs. But what we do now is we primarily work for the wind farm owner. So Siemens are tier one suppliers to the wind farm owner. We tend now just to work for the owner because there's conflicts. You can't work for a contractor as well as working for the owner. There's just a conflict of interest there. So we tend to aim straight for the owners now, and we've got a lot of experience in building these wind farms. And like I said, I'm lucky to have probably some of the best marine coordinators out there now subcontracted to GMS. So there's a huge amount of knowledge and experience within the company, which is great.
Right, perfect. And what would you say has been your biggest impact, I guess, since COVID-19?
The biggest impact is obviously the travel, the quarantine. Some of our clients weren't willing to pay for my guys to sit in a hotel for 7 days before they went to work. So I was ended up paying weeks of wages of guys just quarantining in hotels before they could actually get to the work site. Okay. So that's been the biggest impact, is just the travel, the border issues, and Brexit as well has had a massive effect on us. So I'd say we managed to get through COVID Apart from the quarantine and the costs, and some of the projects were delayed. Brexit has had more of an impact on us because we've had one job in the UK in the last 8 years up in Blythe. We work abroad all the time, pretty much. Okay. So I think Brexit's probably a bigger issue than COVID. But
yeah, have you taken any actions regards to the pandemic or Brexit? I mean,
well, like I said, we managed to get around COVID because we were seen to be a part of there were some regulations that we could use. We were building an offshore installation that dealt with the distribution of electricity. So there was some kind of technical term that we could fall into that. And as EDF wrote us a letter to say, look, these are guys that work on the health and safety side of that. So we never got stopped. We got questioned a lot. We never got stopped. It's more now the fact of this 90 and 180 day rule with Brexit. You can't spend more than 6 months in Europe, without having the right visas, doing this, doing that. That's been a real pain.
Yes. Yeah.
So before we could sort of pretty much move around as we wanted to. I mean, I think the rule was always there, but nobody ever enforced it. Nobody stamped passports. Now it's the delays you get to get into work is unreal, from getting your passport stamped to looking at this, looking at that. And that's been the most challenging thing now, I think, the Brexit thing.
Okay. And, talk about challenges. What would you say, or what would be the best advice would you give to a 18-year-old who's going to go into business?
I've been recently doing this thing called Future First, where you visit schools talking to kids up to 16 at the moment. But there are plans that they want me to go in and talk to 16 to 18-year-old kids about offshore renewables and what to go. And it depends on what their interests are, because there's nothing better than doing a job that you're actually interested in. So it's trying to capture and a lot of the kids have no idea what offshore renewables is about. And the scope. Brazil alone in the next 15, 20 years is going to be going mad, and they're not going to have enough skilled people. So it's just trying to introduce them to make offshore renewables their career path achievable. I wanted to be a vet when I grew up. I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I wasn't the cleverest. So, instead of a career as a vice person saying, oh yeah, you need to do this and need to do that, to sit down and actually say, do you really think that's achievable? Not to douse the enthusiasm, but to try redirect transferable skills and enthusiasm into a more achievable career path. I think, which I've been speaking to the teachers about, I'm pretty much, I don't do PowerPoints. I'll stand up in front of somebody and go on for an hour if I need to, and then, which the teachers like and the kids get engaged with, and then you make it. Last year I did with COVID, I think work experience for like 3 days for 45 students all online. But I did an apprentice / Dragon's Den thing. And the kids all related to it because they've seen it on TV. So, but it was all around offshore wind. And, the majority loved it at the end of the week. They said that was really good. It was quite enjoyable. You know what I mean? Some of them, you could see them nodding off and they were off down the skateboard park, but you're not going to be able to capture everyone. So, so it's just to make things achievable and say, look, if you want to be an electrician offshore, this is the path you want to do. I've got friends now that started as pushing a self-drive boat out of St. Ives, letting somebody go along there. They did that. Then they went to the R&A line, did a bit of training. Then they went on to CTV, skipper, and then, I'm getting them to work for me now. Then they're a marine coordinator, and then they can be a HSE rep, then they can be a client rep, then they can be this. Then you can go all the way up the ladder just from doing a kid's job down on the harbour front in St. Ives for a couple of seasons. So it's achievable, and most of the time it's enjoyable. So I try to make the steps, a lot less complicated, take a lot of barriers out, by just introducing things that they can actually process, and they can relate to.
Wow. Well, this has been very inspiring. Thank you so much, Crispian. And thank you very much. And we'll get this published. And thank you very much. And that's about it. Okay.
Okay. No worries. Okay.